and Rohan have put together such a fantastic panel of experts. I think Dr. Pai, Dr. Reshma, Dr. Sunita, Dr. Jaideep. I think we'll have a wonderful discussion. And Chaitanya, I'm very happy that you actually put in so much effort, and the committee has come up with guidelines for infertility practice post-COVID. So I'm really, really happy to give it to all of you all, and we will be putting it soon on our website, and you can definitely access it. So thank you very much. Thank you, panelists, for being here, and I'm really happy that you're all here. Thank you, Chaitanya. Thank you, Rohan.
Thank you, Lalita madam. So let's start chai with Chaitanya and Rohan.
Yeah, I think we'll have chai here. This is a chai. I'm having a chai as well.
Great. So we have with us Dr. Rohan Parshetkar, sincere, dedicated, hardworking, young and dynamic Joint Secretary of AMOGS. I request Dr. Rohan to invite and introduce our esteemed panelists to the audience.
Rohan, your audio is off, yeah.
Yeah, I think now it's come back, yeah. Firstly, welcome everyone to AMOGS Chai Pe Charcha. We've got some wonderful panelists to discuss the questions we have for them today. My co-moderator is Dr. Chaitanya Shembekar. He's the chairman of the Infertility Committee, AMOGS. He's the past president of the Nagpur OBGY Society, and he's also a managing committee member of the Maharashtra chapter of ISAR. Let me please introduce my esteemed panelists. Our first panelist is Dr. Rishikesh Pai. He's the medical director of the Bloom IVF Group. He's the director of corporate affairs, IFFS. He's received the FRCOG from the Royal College of Obstetricians and Gynecology, London. He's the administrator of the Foxy Manyata program, past senior VP and Secretary General Foxy, and the list continues. And also he's received multiple awards for his work towards the benefit of women. Dr. Rishma Pai, she's a consultant at Leelavati Jaslok Hinduja Care Hospitals, Mumbai. She's received the FRCOG from the Royal College of OBGY, London as well. And she's the president-elect of our Mumbai OBGY Society, and she'll be taking over in the next few days. She's also the past president of Foxy IIG ISAR. She's the assistant treasurer in IFFS, and she's also received numerous awards for her work towards the upliftment of women's health. Dr. Sunita Tandulwadkar, she's the director of Solo Clinic Center of Excellence in Infertility and Endoscopy. She's the founder and medical advisor of Solo Stem Cells Research and Application Center. She's also the HOD of the OBGY department in Ruby Hall. She's the current president of IIG, and she's the chairperson of MSR. And she's also been elected, she's an elected board member in the International Society of Gynecological Endoscopists. Our last panelist is Dr. Jaideep Tank. He'll be joining us in a bit. He's been caught up in an LSCS, but just to give a short introduction, he's the president of AMOGS right now. He's the Secretary General of Foxy. He's the chair of FIGO's Safe Abortion Committee, and he's the Deputy Secretary General of AOFORM. I know this was quite an extensive introduction, but all these guests of ours and panelists are really accomplished, and they're going to give us a real insight into today's topic. So before we start, at the present, we're all in lockdown, and we're still not sure about the situation on 3rd May. Is it going to open or no? We may still continue to be in a partial lockdown, and some areas in Maharashtra may have a lockdown 3.0. So this may actually extend beyond 3rd May. So we're actually waiting for the government directives for the same. So just for now, I want to ask Dr. Rishikesh Pai the first question. So what do you think about the present situation in Maharashtra? How to go about it regarding practice?
There is a bit of confusion because we all understand that if there's an emergency thing, then you can do it. For example, talking about IVF, there's a IVF emergency. Like you have to have a fertility preservation patient. She needs to undergo fertility preservation. Her cancer therapy is starting, fair enough. Or there's an ectopic pregnancy, and you have to tackle it. But what about the elective? So when the COVID-19 came in worldwide, including Foxy, we said that all the elective work should be stopped. Now the time, which included IVF as well. So those, if you were having the ovum pickups going on, the advice was to freeze the embryos and not transfer them. Now the time has come to restart. Now we have to first classify whether IVF, general IVF, not the emergency IVF part, like fertility visit. Whether the general IVF, it comes under, can we start it? Now, there is a mixed signal from the government. Government is sending that you must start all patients because you are depriving the normal patients because of the COVID-19. Doctors are not taking the normal patients. So I personally feel that we all have to get together at the AMOGS level, at the FOXY level, at the ISAR level, and at the IFS level, and have to have a consensus that we are going to start the practice. Only then we can have a legal background to start the standard IVF practice. Now, looking at the economic problems, as in all other industries. So there are two aspects to it. One is the problem of starting from the angle of patient, and one is a problem from the angle of the doctor. We all are also private practitioners. We also have a lot of employees. So we have to, at some point in start the practice. Otherwise, we are also going to be in a financial mess. So that is one angle which we will have to discuss today. And the second angle is whether there is a safety for the patient in starting IVF practice.
Yeah, we would be coming to that.
So these are the two angles. So I feel there is a mixed signal, but my thought would be that all of us should get together as a collective and take a decision, maybe at the AMOGS level, and say, okay, we are going to start all practice. Other than the emergency practice of delivery, pregnancy, ectopic, we are also going to start the routine practice. And if we start the routine practice, then what are the precautions we are going to take? Just like the HC has said that let us start the let us start the routine practice. So at some point we'll have to do it. Otherwise we'll be in an economic mess as well. Of course, the patient problem is there, but the second problem is so consultant problem has to be also discussed in this the deliberation.
Absolutely.
Yeah, true. So I think as Rishikesh sir has rightly said, AMOGS recommendations are also very clear. We are not supposed to do any procedure as far as infertility is concerned. Now my question is to Dr. Reshma madam. At present, can we still do cancer patients?
Definitely. I think on that issue, there was absolutely never a debate because all emergency work, come what may, essential services have to be provided. And so patients who are suffering from any cancer which requires them to undergo chemo or radiotherapy, which will completely destroy their ovarian reserve, or for that matter, for the men, if there's a tumor and for which they need to undergo radiation or chemo. So we are supposed to do semen preservation. We are supposed to do egg retrieval and oocyte or embryo cryopreservation for these patients, or ovarian tissue cryopreservation for that matter. So this was never in debate. This has been going on all over the world throughout the entire pandemic, yes.
Hello?
Yes.
Yeah.
Rishma, I think.
Yeah. So Rishma, thank you, Rishma ma'am, for this very clear-cut picture that if it is an emergency, we do definitely need to go ahead with our treatment. To Dr. Sunita Tandulwadkar ma'am, just wanted to ask you, diminished ovarian reserve, advanced maternal age, or even severe oligospermia, they are the most commonest indications for IVF ICSI. Do you think we should be considering them as emergencies?
Rohan, you know what is happening is, I think Nandita in her introduction, she told us, when this AMH was diagnosed is in the March or a Feb. Now last 6 weeks, we are not doing any consultation. So these are the patients who are calling us and asking us what we should do. But it's very easy to say we should start. Are we ready to start is also equally important. So at present, what I'm doing is, we all know that DHEA, we should be giving at least 6 to 12 weeks prior. So put these patients on this. Antioxidants, give to the people the antioxidant. Because even if every one of us, as Rishikesh said, we have to move ahead. We have to go in a very strategic way how we should be moving. So in my mind today, whether the lockdown, see, lockdown opens or not makes no difference. Corona is not going to disappear from the air the moment lockdown is open. We don't know whether we have decreased the curve, or we have delayed the curve. None of us, the time is. So what I
Hello. Can I request all the other people to mute their audio when someone is talking so that there is no disturbance?
Yeah, thank you, Rishikesh, for that. So what I feel is, let's put these patients on a DHEA drugs. This is again the role of our counseling comes. We need to counsel, we need to give them time. We organize a Zoom meetings, talk to them on SMS or a phone and counsel them, because stress itself will decrease the reserve further. Put them on some antioxidants so psychologically they feel better. Because even if I today on 31st May, I start thinking first is we need to do a lot of preparation. Of course, it will come in a further discussion, but I will start means you can't start it today. We have to have a lot of online prescription going on, training, SOPs, video tutorials for our patients before they even walk in our cabin. I suppose we will be discussing in further, but definitely when we are going to start, maybe in June or July, whenever it is in Maharashtra, maybe little difficult in May, but we have to put these patients, start them, and when you are going to take them, take cases, when we know that we will restrict the number of cases per month, give these patients more priority over the other patients.
Thank you so much. You're absolutely right. I'd just like to welcome Dr. Jaideep Tangse. He's just joined our panel as well. Dr. Chaitanya, would you like to ask Dr. Jaideep about the next topic about the labs and everything?
Yes. Yes, Jaideep, welcome to the webinar. Now, since you have joined just now, just to tell you that we are discussing the present scenario as far as COVID is concerned, and we would like to know you, how do you manage lab during this period? I mean, during lockdown period, how do you manage lab? Hello.
Hello.
Yes,
Yeah,
Jaideep.
I'm sorry. Yeah, I don't know whether I'm
How do you
audible.
manage
But,
lab this period?
okay.
We can hear you loud and clear.
Okay. Thank you, Rishma. Well, thank you, Rohan and Chaitanya, for inviting me for this, and of course, thank you to the AMOGS Executive Committee and the President Nandita for organizing this panel. I think it's a very important panel, and I hope that we'll be able to bring out practical aspects of what to do with your IVF lab now. I think the question Chaitanya asked me was how are we managing the labs in this period of the lockdown? Is that right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think the immediate concern as far as the laboratories go would really be, one is to maintain hygiene in the lab. Second is to maintain the air quality in the lab. And most importantly, to make sure that liquid nitrogen levels in all the storage tanks don't dip too much. I think these are the three most important things that we need to pay attention to. So what we have been doing in our labs, practically speaking, is that we have someone from the hospital. My lab is attached to my hospital. So we have someone from the hospital going in and looking at the lab every day, looking at the incubators and so on and so forth. In the clinics where we don't have a hospital attached to the lab, we have completely closed down the lab. We have closed down the incubators and we have closed down everything completely. The only thing we are doing over there is going and making sure that liquid nitrogen is stocked up every 10 days or every 15 days, depending on the level of liquid nitrogen. And I must actually thank, the providers of liquid nitrogen, because they have really gone above and beyond to make sure that all these thousands of samples that we have frozen haven't suffered because of the lag. I'm sure we are going to talk about how we are going to manage the lab when the lockdown opens. So I'm not going to get into that unless you would like to discuss it now.
I would like to make a point here. Jaideep has more or less covered, but one important point is that when this happened, because we used to top up the liquid nitrogen containers every 5 days, but I sent my boy Ashok, and when we for some reason we had a problem and we went after 10 days. So what we did was we calculated the height of the container. Most of the storage containers have got a 45 to 50 liter of container. So we calculated the drop in the level, and we calculated that for 15 days, if there's a 47 liter container, for 15 days, though my instruction now is that every 7 or 8 days, you should top it up. But if you don't touch the container for 15 to 18 days, you will still have the embryos below this thing. I calculated all the embryo. I calculated the drop in the level of all the 14 containers, and I created a mathematical model, and I concluded that for 15 to 18 days you can wait for, and even then the embryos will stay below the liquid nitrogen. So this is an important point to note. However, for all practical purposes, you should tell your employees that every 10 days you should top it up.
Thank you, Rishikesh. We are topping it up every 10 days, irrespective of the level.
That's the logistics is very important, and
Yeah.
that's the point which we all have to keep in mind. Now we start with the next plan, that is post-lockdown plan. And in this, I would like to ask Sunita madam about the safety precautions that we are supposed to take and our paramedical staff is supposed to take, because safety is the first thing and it should be given priority. So what are the guidelines for the rational use of PPEs?
Okay. See, I think I was going to start in the first question also. Even before your guidelines of PP and all doesn't matter to me. What is most important safety precaution? Can we take that slide out and go because it's disturbing. What I feel, you know, all of us, we have to start making our own standard operative protocols for the staff and for the patients. We have to make the video tutorials. It is not the safety just by wearing the PPE or the face shields or the mask. We have to make online protocols, sending the letters, any patient. See, we all have to understand our practice pre-corona and post-corona is going to be totally different. For example, patients. Let's start with the patient. I need to be very sure when I will open up the clinic, even for consultation, the patient will receive an online questionnaire. Many times they will tell lies, but at least 90%, whether they are having fever, they were out during the lockdown period, any family member support, they have to fill in and send it to you. That is number one. Number two is, if you are not in the hospital, even in a small clinic, ensure you make a triage where patients audio off will be appreciable. We have to have a temperature checkup and fill up the form again before the patient climbs up your clinic. Third important thing is same with your staff. At present, everyone is in lockdown, from your sisters, from nurses, from your counselor, from your embryologist, everyone. It's very important that they fill up this form, whether they were in a hot area where they were having a positive patient around, all these, whether they suffered from any specific or non-specific symptoms. Because corona, we all know now, it is coming out with smelling disturbances. So all these questionnaires should be filled up. Again, in your cabin, even you have to have parameters. You have to have a sections, OPD consulting sections differently. When you are going to take the patients for a stimulation protocol, during the stimulation, those should be separate. When they are already taken and they are taking an injection there. So we have to minimum team formation. Which are the team who will be looking after only stimulation, who will be only OPD, who will be doing only counseling, who will be in a OR. All these, we need to have a SOP of these things in place. And I feel one of you who is very good in making a video, we should be sending the videos to staff and the patient. When you enter, ensure you have wore the mask, you have face shield on you. All these things we should send out to all our patients. Then once the patient, PP and all, I don't know how much will be of use in the OPD anyone is using, but in the center where the IVF procedure, when the stimulation will happen, that time we should be doing it all. My biggest concern today, you know what? Consultation, we can start. Today, the government has not started us with the massively testing, testings. Even we don't have the antibody testings even available today. So we should be very careful in ART practice, but definitely consultation we can start thinking of. with all SOPs in places, with the teams in places. Remember, anyone get infected, we have the patient, all of us will be again another self-quarantine lockdown period of 2 weeks. We should be careful about it.
Absolutely. I completely agree with you, ma'am. What you said was giving a very comprehensive view about the entire format and how to go ahead with it. I just want to, these were some of the ESHRE guidelines which were given as instructions to the staff as well. You can just look at the slide. I don't want to read it. Even talk about informing your staff not to go for any functions, like a small marriage, or if there's a puja at the neighbor's house or something like that. Even things like that should be kept as social distancing is at its peak, and it should be maintained even after this lockdown's over. Just because the lockdown's over, that this, yeah, Sunita ma'am.
That is what I said. Our way we do the practice is going to be different. It should be strict appointment. Patient has to come with the time in hand. They cannot say I'm late. Social distancing, distancing in the waiting room, not talking to each other. It's so many things. SOPs have to be in place by each and every, apart from just the histories, how to behave in a consultation room at different phases of this. We might have to do pick-ups, transfer in the morning, consultation in one point, stimulation of the patients at another time. So we have to divide the time zone and divide the team in the time zone.
Absolutely.
Can I intervene?
The next question was for Dr. Pai only, which I wanted to ask about the mini. How do we form like teams and all?
So right. So basically, you know, the ESHRE guideline has come. That is very good. What, as Sunita has suggested, that we must. So what we can do in AMOGS is that we can designate all the younger junior people which are there in AMOGS. Each one can be told to make a video. So instruction to the patients and to the staff. So we don't repeat everything. Each you designate, Chaitanya and Rohan, you designate each person to make how to wear PP, what are the questions. Then this questionnaire that has been given by HT is very important, the 13 page. So now what happened is, when I thought of how to start again the lab, I always thought, okay, I will do a test 11 days beforehand, then I'll do a test just before starting the patient stimulation, then I'll do a test just before the pickup. But the problem is with the test is that it is not accurate and they are not available vastly. So what HTA has said is correct. Instead of the test, we'll have to do the triage. Triage means what? You will ask 13 questions and find out based on it which person actually may be potentially infected, and based on that you advise a test. So that's one thing. And the second thing is that you have to consider that every patient is a potentially infected patient, because 30% of these patients are asymptomatic. So now when you start, you will first of all you have to create 2 teams of staff, because if in the one of the team one of the staff falls sick and has COVID, the whole team has to stay in quarantine for 14 to 28 days. If you are in Kerala, your quarantine period is 28 days. You have to divide the 2 teams into 2, and also furthermore you have to have a understanding with your colleague in your private practice. Suppose both the teams fall sick, or you have small IVF center, then you may not be able to do 2 teams. So you and your colleague create the teams, and you decide that, okay, by chance one of the person in my team falls sick, then I will take my patients and bring to you, all your patients to your place. So this is very important. The team formation is very important. Minimization of the staff. So what Sunita is saying is, I would modify it a little, that one team does everything. That is the consulting, the monitoring of the patient, everything is done, and minimizing of visits is also very important. So instead of having 5 visits or 6 visits, you have to do all the teleconferencing, and then when they come first time, at that point only you stimulate them, you do the scanning, you do the stimulation, see all the investigation, you tell them to send the investigation beforehand, and you can start the stimulation. So you try to minimize. So when they come only 3 times, first and on the first day, when day 2 to start the stimulation, then day 9 when you see whether the stimulation is going well, and they come on the day of pickup. And then most I would advise that freeze all would be a good strategy. Once you do the pickup, you
Right.
freeze all and then transfer it in the next cycle. I
Right,
can
sir.
go on and on, but there are a lot of other participants. So I would like
Yes.
to cut it here.
Thank you, sir. Rohan.
Yes.
Hello.
Hello.
Yes, Rohan, I would like to ask Jaideep sir
Yeah.
regarding restarting of ART practices. Hello.
Yeah, am I audible?
Jaideep, how many days before actually starting the IVF you should start preparations? Or for that matter, IUI also.
Okay.
How many days prior to that you should start preparations?
Okay. Chaitanya, I just, this question actually is ideally taken in two parts. So you have
Right.
the first part where you are going to prepare the patients, and the second part where you are actually going to start doing the procedures. And I think about preparation of patients, Dr. Sunita and Rishikesh have already made several observations, and I must say that I'm in agreement with them. But I have a bit of a contrarian point of view also. And my contrarian point of view comes from the fact that there is good data to show that almost 80% of the IVF centers in our country, and this is data taken from the Nari registry. I think this year's Nari registry didn't specify it, but the previous Nari registry specified that almost 80% of all IVF centers in this country are doing less than 120 IVF cycles a year. And this has led to us doing batch IVF. And I think this is going to come to our rescue now, because when you do a batch IVF cycle, you are so used to restarting the lab every time there is a batch that one is already mentally tuned on how to do it. So obviously
Right.
there will be that 20% of IVF centers who do ongoing IVF, but there will be a large percentage of IVF centers who are already mentally tuned stimulations as well as laboratories. I think that is something which is quite different in our country compared to, for example, the ASHRAE guidelines or the ASRM guidelines. It is my view. So I'm very much a half glass full kind of a person. And it is my optimistic point of view that India has successfully managed to flatten the curve. I am very optimistic about this. I think the actions that have been taken so far are really excellent. I mean, which other country in the world with a population of our magnitude, with the percentage of testing being so low, has got the number of deaths that we do? I don't see number of cases as a metric at all, because the number of cases depends on how much you test, but you cannot hide the number of deaths. And the fact of the matter is that the number of deaths in our country has simply not been as high as were projected to be. I remember seeing this one interview which Barkhadat did, where this academic from Princeton or somewhere was saying India is projected to have 1 million deaths. And I was aghast. I mean, this person was casually talking about millions of deaths just like this. Do you think that in India we are just going to roll over and let the virus steamroll our population? Completely not. So I think three things at the end, as Rishikesh said, there are many people. I don't want to take anybody else's time. But three things. One, our tendency to do batch IVF cycles is going to come to our rescue over here, because we are used to starting and stopping IVF labs. Two, I don't think practice is going to change in a very major way on the ground. It may change for a couple of months, but changing practice and changing habit, according to me, is going to be extremely difficult. So tomorrow, if I'm told that I have to see patients only by appointment and I can see 20 patients only in a day and so on, it's going to be impossible for me to run my practice. So according to me, within 2 or 3 months, we are going to go back to the way we were. 2 months, 3 months, 4 months, whatever it may be. I'm not saying immediately, but at some point in time, we will probably go back to the way we were. And of course, we should not be in a hurry to start the practice, because once we start the practice, the patients are not going to go away anywhere. They are all going to come back to us. They are also waiting for the treatment. So I am optimistic, and I think that we will come out of this smelling like roses.
Yes, thank you, Jaideep. And Rohan, just a minute. This is the something which you are displaying on the screen, and I think that is a very important point. There is a triage of questionnaire, and this is a questionnaire which we should provide to all our patients as well as staff before we restart the IVF lab and IVF cycles, or for that matter, any fertility practices. Because once the patients they pass this test, then only they will be recruited for the further treatment, right?
Chaitanya, can I again put a contrarian point to this?
Okay,
And my point here is that 95% of those who have tested positive are asymptomatic. So even if you're
exactly,
going to give this questionnaire, you may do it to feel good about yourself or to protect yourself medico-legally or whatever. But at the end of the day, if you're going to get infected, all it takes is one patient.
right,
So, I
right,
mean, all this is well and good in countries like Europe and everywhere where there is institutionalized practice. It may be good for, big practitioners, Dr. Tandulwadkar, Dr. Pai, who work in big hospitals and all. But for somebody who works in nursing homes like I do, I don't see myself, I don't even give appointments. I see all my patients by walk-in. And tomorrow, if I start giving appointments, I don't know whether my patients are going to accept this or not. So I may use this at the point of entry. So currently also, I was just doing a cesarean when I came. I'm doing OPD every day. And what we are doing is that at the point of entry, we are taking the temperature of the patient and we are asking for a history. And if they don't have a history and they don't have temperature, we are just going ahead and seeing the patients. We are wearing masks and so on and so forth. But the basic recommended protection is simply a mask, hand washing between each patient, and a meter's distance away from the patient. So I think if you follow that, you're going to be all right.
Rohan,
true.
can I say something?
Yeah,
Yeah.
of course.
Yeah, thank you, Jaideep. Very well elaborated. There are two things I think every one of us have to absorb. Jaideep, you are doing obstetric practice. In fact, I finished two cesareans and then reached at 3:30 to join this meeting.
Yeah,
I'm precisely saying 3 to 6 months only. I
exactly.
we cannot. Now, I used to see around 80 to 100 patients from 3 o'clock till 10 o'clock every day. We have to change our mentality. We have to decrease their visit. We will be going for a more telecommunication. As Rishikesh said, call them in entire only 2 times or 3 times. I totally believe in that. And till we have these all facilities of checking the curve coming down today, I don't think we are in a position to say confidently that we flattened the curve. Only in the month of July, we will be able to say whether we succeeded or we delayed our curve. Only upon the lockdown opens or not. But we have to change mentally that you cannot have 50 patients sitting outside. Do you think our consulting rooms are big enough to accommodate so many patients with 1 meter distance? No, they are not. In an institution, at least I can tell them to go and sit in a coffee shops and all. I'm talking about smaller nursing homes only, where the sitting area may be 400, 500 square foot, the reception area. So you cannot have so many people crowding. I think there are more important points. So let's move ahead.
Can I
So
just say something that basically what we are trying to do now is that we have to, when we come back. So now I was listening to so many other, what a lot of financial experts are saying that this is an opportunity when the industries restart to change things that are bad in the industry and improve on it. So this is one opportunity where suddenly there's a shutdown and you're going to come back. So what can you do to not only come back and start it in a better fashion than what you used to do in the past? So like looking at my practice, I don't have a very heavy practice, but I have a very more focused practice. As Jaideep said, we are all infertility specialists. I'm talking from the infertility angle. So for me, I would be very happy to start doing more structured practice, like how the dentists do it. The dentists do it very well. Have you seen any two people in the dental waiting room? One comes, then the other comes. They do it exactly. So we as gynecologists have not learned to do it. So our patients also will start learning, because once we start saying that we are going to do it in a particular way, our patients will relearn that better way. And that is what is important. Second point is that what this whole discussion is all about is how to be safe, not only for patient but for yourself, because we don't want to fall sick with COVID. So what are the precautions we are going to take? What are the changes that we are going to bring in our outpatient? What are the changes which are going to bring in the operation theater? What are the changes we are going to bring in the lab, so that our patient and our healthcare worker doesn't fall sick? This is the most important thing which we have to discuss and come to a conclusion with. And the third important thing which both of you moderators have to decide is when do we start the practice? We can't wait for 5 months. We have got huge amount of employees. They have to be paid some amount of money. We can't just say, just go and sit home. They are our family. So we have to start our practice. And when are we going to start it? Because if we take a collective decision, then the government can't say that why did you do it? Because the government is very ambiguous about the starting of the IVF practice. They are saying, okay, emergency you start, fair enough. What about the elective? So these are questions we have to conclude as association and as organization, so that once we take a collective decision, we are safe, legally safe. Suppose we start our IVF and tomorrow one transmission of COVID happens to the patient. What is our legal responsibility? So that is where the association like FOXY, AMOGS, ISAR, IFS come into play, because once you have a collective decision of what you want, when to start practice, which patient you start practice, then we will be safe in our practice.
Absolutely. What you said is absolutely true. So Dr. Nandita just wants to add on to that a little. She's just online. So she wanted to just mention that
Okay, hi. Rishikesh, there was a meeting, especially of the Bombay Commissioner and all the government officials and all, and they've actually given instructions for the practice in Bombay to start elective work. Now, elective work, obviously, they're talking about the pressure of the non-COVID patients on the Nair, JJ, KEM, etc., because the nursing homes are turning away patients. So I think that ambiguity is definitely there, because they are not thinking of IVF, but we can take advantage of that, as you're saying. See, we have to take care of everybody. And there is a beautiful article by the Swedish. Sweden has done a very different model. What they've done is they've not done a lockdown, and they have managed to crush the curve without the lockdown. So in the world, there are two models which are happening. One is a lockdown and crushing the curve, and Sweden model is without the lockdown. But in our country, the lockdown model is good, because when we have bad cases, there will be infrastructure which has got created now in our country. So it will really be good. Now, again, the ICMR has gone back and changed its rule that those who are asymptomatic patients, those who do not require hospitalization, will be in home isolation. So again, that is good. So I think it's a sign for all of us that we should start getting into practice. And this is going to be a way of life. You are going to have to protect yourself and your patients in future for the next 6 months to 1-2 years, I feel, till we get the vaccine. So we have to get started. We have to put things in place. And as you said, the organizations need to take a stand on this and get started. And I think all of us here belong to different organizations. We can actually come together on a platform and get some guidelines or recommendations out. Sorry for interrupting. Okay, I'm going out. Bye.
It was
thank you so much.
Fantastic idea, and I also agree with Rishikesh. Whether your city is in a red zone or a green zone, and because Chandrapur, not a single case has been recorded. The same way, I know Solanki, but suddenly they got 56 cases. What is important is when organization has to come out with the stand, so that if any patient during the treatment because of other patient got corona positive, it is not legally sued to you.
Absolutely, you're absolutely right.
So
the pandemic laws states that because of in the act itself, it doesn't allow it to hold the doctors responsible for any treatment per se. So I know we've been talking about it, but I just want to move on to the next question. We've been talking about our own safety, health-wise, patient safety as well. So the next question I want to talk about is the medical legal aspect of the practice post-lockdown in ART as well. So my next question is to Dr. Rishma Pai. What about the documentation post-lockdown? Before we start treatment, should we take informed consent of all the patients? Should we give them the choice to continue the treatment or postpone the treatment?
I think that is going to be a very important aspect once we start practice. And even if you just follow guidelines from ESHRE, One of the first thing they've started is with consent, whether they want to or don't want to start practice, whether they are ready to accept the fact that they may be at a slightly higher risk if they do IVF at this phase. And if they do turn positive, there is a possibility that we may want to stop the cycle in between. So they have to give a consent to that also. Maybe they're doing stimulation, halfway through they turn positive. We may ask them to discontinue stimulation. So they should be ready for that. They should be ready for, if they go through to egg pickup, they should be ready to freeze the embryos in case they turn positive or need to be quarantined. So there are a lot of very specific consents that we need to take for these patients. And of course, we need to halfway through again, re-look at everything again. We need to sort of have a code of conduct. They need to be signing that code of conduct. Lots of people are calling in and saying on the computer that people can lie to us. You know, when we send them a questionnaire, they will say, oh, we are very safe, because they are wanting to do the IVF, especially patients who are, poor reserve, who are in a rush to do treatment. So they can lie to us, which is a fact. But we have to treat every single patient like a COVID positive patient. That has to be done. So the triage, the, questionnaire, all that is, necessary, but it's still at the end of it, we have to treat everyone like they're positive and take universal precautions throughout. And this is where our organizations today, as we stand today, ESAR and IFS, the two Indian organizations, both of them have said no IVF to be done at the present moment. So unless they change their stand, it's not legally binding on us. But like we said, we need that protection from organizations that can go ahead. Infertility is a disease just like any other, and it is not a totally elective procedure. There are a large number of patients who are in fact needing to be attended to quite quickly. And so we have to protect ourselves, we have to protect our patients. All consents before, during, in the middle, and even after have to be there. So all that has to be there, and all our organizations need to come together on a common platform and issue guidelines sooner rather than later.
Right. Thank you, Reshma madam. Now my next question is to Sunita madam regarding high risk cases. So as we know that almost 30% of our patients, they have advanced paternal age or diabetes or hypertension or some other ailments like renal problems. So do we postpone such patients for another 6 months or maybe 1 year, or shall we take permission from local authorities before starting treatment for such patients?
I think I was muted. Yeah, Chaitanya, good question, good thinking. So this is also when we will start it, we have to segregate the low risk zone and the high risk patient. The patients with hypertension, diabetes, immunosuppressants. There are two things. One, we have to explain them that if they catch, it will be that if they get into the infection, they will be at more high risk with their morbidity or mortality. It is very important for all of us to confirm that. Secondly is, in my protocol, about 35, otherwise also, I used to take a physician fitness, check them, ECG, X-ray, 2D echo, all it's important during the pregnancy, because I manage their obstetrics also, just to be comfortable. It's better when you divide the risk with the team member involved. I think it is important that we see from the COVID risk. And apart from me taking the decision, it's mandatory for me to sit and explain this thing to the patient that in case if you contract this infection during the procedure or during the pregnancy, will be at a high risk. So are you willing? Patient's willingness is equally important. So if I talk to the patient, she's 35, she's obese, she's hypertensive, she says, okay, I'm ready to go ahead, I don't want to wait, because these are the high risk factors. With the advanced age, I'm going to be more high risk even into 2022. So it is with the patient, we have to weigh, with the willingness of the husband, with the special consents, we have to explain and go ahead.
I would like to add here, what Sunita said is correct, but I would also like to give you the other aspect of it, that we have another high risk individual, that is the senior ART consultant, who is more than 50 years old. So my advice to them is that we have to see that the senior, just like in the whole country, when the lockdown is lifted, the people who are the younger generation is going to come back. So the younger generation has to come back. More than 50 plus people have to stay still behind till especially our healthcare workers, our colleagues, people like me and all of us more than 50 have to take control ourselves and allow the younger people to take care of the practice till the vaccine comes. It is my real forward advice to all the senior people who are doing IVF as well, that this is one time in your life then when you have to learn to say no. I'll give an example. King Henry, in the 15th century, there was a sleeping sickness, just like Spanish flu or just like COVID. There was a viral infection in England, and for 3 years, lot of people died. King Henry did not come out of his castle for 4 years. He just distanced himself, and that's how he survived the infection. People used to die in 12 hours. It was called sweating sickness. So the social distancing for elder consultants is very important. This is one time in our life which will not come back again. We have to allow our younger people to go and fight at the front, just like the soldiers go and fight at the front in the war. The generals sit and plan it. We have to behave like generals, plan the practice, talk to the teleconsult people, control the staff, control the administration, but not go to the forefront. This is a warning. It is very important.
Right, Rishikesh.
I agree with you, Rishikesh. Today, for example, I work in an institute. When you go, 2 operation theaters are working, 1 emergency head injury. I don't know how come they got a head injury in this lockdown. But their COVID testing was not done. They have to do emergency. It's a panic situation in your mind. When you saw so many people, 3 operation theaters, it's all matter a lot. So it's very easy to say, sit at home and during lockdown, okay, I'm frustrated, I want to start working. We need to be very, very disciplined. You cannot just say, we being a senior, even middle generation. For example, suddenly my reception, she may be 30, she got into, everything goes into the lockdown again for your own clinic. So your death of your own practice for 15 days. And it's very important that the youngsters talk to them, the management, the protocol, the decision has been done in coordination with the senior, and the senior doing more teleconsultation, and the middle level people who are good enough, 30, 35, they come in and they run the show so that they avoid the complication. They are mature enough to understand.
Yes, that
And
is
I think
true.
now even patients, everybody is getting sort of accustomed to the idea of teleconsultation. I mean, I myself, for the first 1.5 month, felt very awkward to tell anybody that I will say charge for consultation. We've done completely free consultation all throughout this time phase. But if this goes on for months on end, you cannot continue to do it. There are so many patients calling in, reports coming in, this picture, bloods, old histories. So we have to at some point make it professional, and slowly I think the patients are also going to adjust to it. We have to adjust to it and start doing a lot of teleconsultation, and it's as good as sitting opposite the patient and talking to them. So I think a lot of it can be done by safer practices rather than unnecessarily being rash with our behaviors.
True.
Absolutely,
Yes,
I completely
that is
agree
true.
with you. In fact, when I had a discussion with Dr. Rishikesh Pai a few days ago, he was talking about how the younger people should actually be consulting in the forefront, and if any conversation needs to happen with the elderly consults, a video call from the OPD itself through the younger consultants can be made to the seniors handling the cases. So that would definitely reduce the risk of the senior consultants with the social distancing aspect, as well as the patients would also be happy meeting the senior consultant whenever necessary and whenever required as well.
Right.
Absolutely.
That's true, Rohan. And Rohan, as we are on the right track, even senior staff members should also be taken care of. So Ashray has come up with a very nice triage on how to take care of staff in this COVID era, and I would like Rohan to display this triage for patients. I think, and Rishikesh sir, you can throw light on this. And this is really a very nice triage for questionnaire for not only for staff but for patients as well. So how do we go ahead with the various situations?
So this is it's actually Chaitanya, this is self-explanatory. So you need to do the triage. So basically what, the Europeans are very conservative, and So the testing is not done very aggressively, you know, and that is very important for India as well, because there are so many millions of people. How can we test everyone? Again, test is not accurate. It's not easily available. So testing is important only if there is a possibility of a. So as Jaideep Tank has said, that all people we should have a system where all people, you mentally think that they are positive. So you take all precautions, standard precautions, to see that the staff as well as the patient and the doctors are not infected by each other. And you, by using a triage system, you can find out which patient need testing. Because if the tests are not available or very few tests are available, how can you do tests for everyone? So only those which are possible testing, then you do the test. And if the test come negative, it's called scenario 1 by H3. But that means if there is a negative test, then you know that patient is not infected and you can go ahead and do it. So even in that, you know, I was listening to Luca Gianaroli, who is a chairman of H3, and he was discussing about how to restart IVF clinics in Italy and Spain. And so there they are going to be doing before starting, 15 days before is the first testing to be done. Because, you know, or at least 9-10 days, because the latent period is about 5 to 7 days. So test may be negative, but she may be in the asymptomatic phase. And then a lot of people are advocating both tests, that is PCR as well as the antibody test. So by using these two tests, you can actually classify the patient into scenario 1, scenario 2, and scenario 3. So the triage can be the first level. And if you don't have anything, you don't have a test available to you after the triage, then based on the triage, if you think patient is not very high risk, you can go ahead and do it. If you think the patient is high risk, suppose she has got a symptom of SARI, if there is a flu-like symptom, then you can test them. So testing only for high risk patients which are based on the triage coming positive. And if by testing it she comes negative, you go ahead and do it. And if she comes positive, then you of course cancel the cycle. So this is the combination of two. And I was a very extremist, you know, 5 days back, I was very extremist in my attitude that everyone should be tested. But now I realized that that was an extreme attitude. Now I would use the triage questionnaire and identify those people need to be tested. So I'm more selective. Plus I will do all possible things. I'll make 2 teams. I'll make changes in my OPD, in my OT room, in my lab room, to see that none of my people get affected. In fact, yesterday only I was seeing a beautiful, on the internet, one guy in San Diego area has come out with a COVID-free clinic. You know, and he has got different points, you know, especially in the lab, what are the new, cleaning systems that we are going to install. So already you need to start planning your ventilation, because in next 15 days to 1 month's time, everything is going to start. So ventilation, ducting, everything, I'm already on my plans. I'm already in talks with various suppliers to change my ventilation system, and in the lab, in the OT, and in the waiting area, so that I can do whatever possible to create safety for myself, my patients, and my healthcare workers.
True. So now I feel that patients are equally important. And Reshma madam, one question for you: are we supposed to do patient education as well? I mean, is it mandatory on the part of doctors to do something for the education of patients, because they are coming to us and most of them, they are, you know, unaware of the precautions and other things that they're supposed to do, take during IVF cycle or IUI cycles. So is it our responsibility and duty to do the patient education?
In fact, education is very much a part of even the ASHRAE guidelines, which really are beautiful, which are released on the 23rd of April. And definitely our responsibility, not only to protect them, but also to protect us and our staff. And, you know, there's a lot of noise about COVID everywhere. So there is certain degree of awareness which everybody has. But despite that, you will see anytime you step out, there are lots and lots of people who are breaking the social distancing norms. Most people think it will not happen to them. They're feeling quite well. And so education is really important, telling them how they have to behave, how they expect the reception team, when they enter into the nursing home or clinic, how the reception team should behave, how the doctor, their interaction with the doctor should be, how they should come back with the reporting. So not only should they answer the questionnaire first, they should be very honest, because it's to protect them and their family. Tomorrow something happens to them, their family may get affected. So importance of creating this awareness with them, making them sign the consents in between treatment, again during ovulation stimulation, having questionnaires. We will constantly be having lot of consents to be signed, telling them that they are, giving us proper reporting at every time. So education is very important, not only patients, even our staff, and all of us have already started doing it. We've already made plans of how to protect our staff, even if it's our receptionist or assistant. We have to provide them with the basic things like the gloves, like the spectacles, like the facial cover, the visors, and disinfectant everywhere. As soon as patient enters, how they will check the temperature. Already all the temperature checking machines have been bought. So we have to bring our precautions in place, and we have to utilize this time before practice starts to literally get systems into place. Because unfortunately, practice by many of us has been a little erratic. It hasn't been, we don't have that many SOPs in place like many of the international centers. So today is our time to set up SOPs for OPDs, for inpatients, for OTs, for embryology labs, everywhere.
And,
education at all level is crucial.
Chaitanya, one point here that is what I feel that there is basically a class difference in India. So what Jaideep is saying is really means correct, that there are, and of course there are a lot of gynecologists with huge amount of practice, but they will have to somehow try to change and incorporate certain, because I'll give you a parallel that when I was reading about Spanish flu, and apparently in India in those days, in 2 years, 6 million people died. And what they found that the death rate was highest 20% among the lower class of society. Among the upper class of society, the death rate was 12%. And among the Britishers who were staying in Mumbai, the death rate was 8%. So the class difference, as the number of, with the class, unfortunately, the malnutrition is more, etc. So with the class, the practice also, someone will say, oh, I have got a practice where a lot of people are coming, agree that, oh, I have got a general hospital practice. But we have to, the government of India has to spend 15% or 10% of their GDP on health from now on, and see that that class also get the same amount of healthcare. Otherwise, again, we'll have a mortality rate which is highest in the lower class. And it's the same story. After 100 years, we'll have the same story repeated, that based on the financial position of your life, you are going to have a different mortality, which is not a good thing to happen in a country. We have to give the same yardstick. And for that, we need to spend more money. Why this is happening? Because the money spent is not enough for healthcare. It is 1.5% of GDP. From now on, money spent should be at least 10% of GDP for healthcare. Then only, and that should also percolate down into private practice. Private practitioners also should, even if they have a mass practice, they should also try to implement certain things so that they can protect that mass which is coming to their clinic.
Right. Very nicely said, Rishikesh sir. And as we all know that adaptation of ART services is the need of hour. We must change the way we practice. 100 patients sitting in OPD is the thing of the past. We cannot afford to do that. And so we have to avoid unnecessary visits, and we have to do adaptation. And that is what is more important for all of us to remember. Now, Rohan, we can start with the simulations and other protocols.
Say something also just for the adaptation of this new protocol, standardization of the protocols is very important. For example, you know how the ART is practiced 25,000 cycle, and then you charge separately, and all these gimmicks play in the ART. Now there will be some centers who will be doing maybe little bit fever to the patient, otherwise it would not have been bothered. They will do their testing, and again at the time of a stimulation they will do the testing, which may be after 2 weeks before we start the injection. That is going to add on to the financial burden to the patient. So if everyone across the country standardize into the practice, don't play the money gimmicks to the patient, is very, very important for all of us.
True.
Correct.
Rohan, you can start with the actual procedures now.
I think we'll shift a little to the clinical aspect of the talk about stimulation. so Jaideep sir, this question is directed towards you. So the actual treatment cycle, how do we proceed? Like, what are the precautions our staff should be taking? Whether PPEs should be used during sonographies? Is there any sanitation required between scans, and in what manner should we proceed regarding stimulation protocols?
Rohan, so again, I'm going to answer this in two parts. One is about the stimulation protocol itself, and the second is what to do when the patient comes to you for either a consultation or an ultrasound. Is that what you wanted to know exactly?
My God.
Can we just mute the panelists, please? Yeah. So basically what I want to know is, during stimulation also we need to do the scans in order to just check for the growth of the eggs and everything. So
well, so far, Rohan, I have always, my practice since the last, I think since 2004 or something, has been not to do blood tests during stimulation. I've been quite happy with it. This was based on all the European studies on minimal monitoring, and I have been quite happy with it. I'm fond of saying that the first blood test I do is beta HCG 14 days after embryo transfer. I don't do any other test at all. We
So I'm sorry, you're breaking up.
Left.
So there's a network issue at Dr. Jaideep Tang's.
For me, the post-lockdown practice is not going to change much. Patients come on day 1 for a stimulation. They come on day 6 for a scan and starting antagonist. And then they come on day 9, unless very exceptionally if the patient has not responded. But that hardly ever happens. So we call patients.
I'm really sorry, your voice is broken up.
Sir, we have lost Dr. Jaideep Tang.
So can I?
Dr. Pai, can you take over for the?
Basically, if you look at I will run through the H3 recommendation, that is for ovarian stimulation monitoring, and I've added some of my minimal exposure for isolation of staff showing symptoms of infection. Use of PPE by staff is very important. Minimize the number of visits and optimize number of blood tests. Jaideep doesn't anyway collect blood tests. We do, so we will optimize the blood tests, and maybe a home blood test collection would be done. Home self-administration of medicine is very important. Medicine refund. This is a point I took from Eric Forman in New York. I was listening to his this thing. He said that what they are doing is that they are giving refunds about in the middle of the cycle. If the patient develops symptoms, they have assured the patient that if there is a cancellation of the cycle, they will refund the medicine money, because they don't want patient to hide that they have developed a symptom. So this is very important. Hello, there is someone who has got a child there who is talking and disturbing. You have to mute your this thing. So coming back, that medicine refund is very important. Vaginal probe. So every time you do a scanning, you must clean the machine and the probe between the two scans. It is very important. Here I would like to make a point that if you have a sonologist, some units have got a special ultrasonologist. That sonologist is one point where he can infect a lot of people, just like the anesthetist can infect a lot of people. So you must keep, and the most important thing is that you need to avoid hyperstimulation, because if you have hyperstimulation, then GnRH trigger and freeze-all is very important, and you must minimize any complication, especially hyperstimulation has to be minimized. So this is as far as the ovulation, stimulation and monitoring is concerned.
So one other question I had, when we're talking about scans, you will have multiple patients who come for scans. So should there be some time interval between the scans?
Yeah, I was thinking of that only. If you look at all our ultrasound rooms, I had gone to Weill Cornell University in New York. They have 40 ultrasound scan rooms. They do 3,500 patients. But every room is small, like a dingy thing. So many so you will have to change that. If you will have to make a room which is more larger, there is more ventilation, there should be an exhaust fan, there should be a gap between the two patients. Because what we are talking about is 30% of asymptomatic COVID positive patients who will be missed out by all of us, and there is no test available. So we'll not be able to test everyone. So we have to potentially consider everyone as a COVID positive and then try to make, so our the ventilation system. And in fact, in our this thing, we are changing our ultrasound room, and we are going to do the ultrasound in a larger room. And you should have an exhaust fan, because if you have an air conditioner, it's going to keep on changing the air in the same room. So all these things are also very important while doing the procedure and changing of. So everyone, sonologist has to wear the PPE. I mean, especially the mask and the face shield and the gloves have to be used for every patient.
Absolutely.
And I think we'll have to really invest in quite a few air purification units. There are a lot of them available. Some of them are not very expensive, and the really state-of-the-art ones run into lakhs and lakhs of rupees. But depending on even our clinics, starting from there, if we don't have open ventilation, lot of space, we'll have to have air purification units in almost every area of contact with patient. So those investments should be
And
made.
those air purification units are already available. We have already ordered for some. And if anyone is interested, I can give you the name and address of those people who are already there supplying the units.
Thank you so much, sir.
Feel also see it is must to invest not only on this system but the disciplined way of a practice. Believe me, long term, 6 weeks down the line, patient will say, I feel safe coming to this place.
That's
Because
important.
they follow strict protocol, they also feel protected. We are worried only about ourselves, think from their psychology. And as Jaideep was saying, he don't stop anyone. I see, we also used to have walk-in patient from Nagar. Patient walks in without appointment. It's not that we will not be, but we'll be asking him to go, wait, with the turn they have to come in. It's all important. Remember, every one of us have to remember the way with the discipline our staff will work, our patient will go in a positive state of mind from us.
And basically, let's remember that this is not the first and it's not going to be the last of the pandemics. This is a time for us to learn once and for all that we have to be disciplined in our practice. We can't be casual. We can't be careless. Today it is there. It may tone down. It may resurface again in winter months. It may go down. It may come back again next year in a big wave. And then another pandemic will come. So this is here to stay today with our population, with the crowding, with changes in pollution environment. Pandemics are here to stay. We need to take this opportunity to really reinvent ourselves and our centers and make it safe for everybody. It's our duty and our responsibility.
And Rohan, there are a lot of SMS which are coming, which is the spacing between the two cases, two pickups.
Yeah, so that's the next question. That's the next question, which is directed to you.
Rohan, can I sort of interrupt? I'm sorry, the connection dropped in between.
Yeah.
Am I audible now?
Yes.
Yeah. So while in principle, I agree with whatever Dr. Pai and both the Dr. Pais have said, I also feel that at some point in time, we will have to have a bridge between what is ideal and what is realistic for a large majority of clinics in the country. And let's keep 2 or 3 facts in mind. The first fact is, and this is a sentence which I took from a book I was reading, Rishikesh, on the Spanish flu, and that is, all pandemics end. I mean, history is witness to the fact that every 100 years or so, we have a pandemic. And at the end of the day, all pandemics do end. It's not that pandemics don't end. And pandemics are not as common as one would like to think. Pandemics occur typically every 100 years. So this is the third series of sort of a transmission, if you will. So there was the SARS-CoV-1, and that was restricted to China. And then there was SARS-CoV-2, which was the MERS disease. And this is SARS-CoV-3, which is the COVID disease, which for various reasons has really taken a life of its own. So my first point of view is all pandemics end. 2, we need to achieve something which is realistic, and keeping in mind the fact that the more we invest, the more the patient is going to burden with the return on that investment. So while I agree in principle with everything that all the panelists have said, I would urge also that we need to be a little cautious about recommending air filtration systems in the outpatient department or in the ultrasound rooms. I'm not really sure that they are absolutely required. And Is that right, Rishikesh?
No,
Or
no,
you?
we are saying that we should have exhaust fans in the ultrasound
Yes,
room,
yes, that is
and
fine.
ventilation
Yeah.
should be more open rather than
Yeah.
having an air condition.
Right. So, for
You know,
example, let
ultrasound.
us look at the guidelines for waiting areas in hospitals which cater to COVID positive patients. What are the guidelines for them? Because these are people who are at the most risk. These are hospitals dealing with COVID positive patients. So there's no supposition here. They have COVID positive patients, and the guidelines are, as I said, for in the waiting area, not in the area where the positive patients are there. The guidelines are 3-ply mask, frequent hand washing, and social distancing of 1 meter. Now, if you're looking for a basic minimum standard on how to run your OPD post lockdown, then I think this is the basic minimum standard you need to have. But till when are you going to have this basic minimum standard? For me, that is the biggest question. Do I mean to say that I'm going to do this for the rest of my life
No,
as long
no.
as I'm doing?
For 2
It's
years,
not
maybe.
2 years.
clearly it is not,
Till
right?
the
And
till
I
the
don't think
epidemic
anybody's,
stops.
That's
yeah,
why
clearly
we're
it is
talking
not,
about
and nobody's
post-lockdown
suggesting it.
period.
But at the same time, so again, we need to do something which is, so for example, an ultrasound scan between patients. Do I need to keep a gap between every patient? Do I need to wipe down my probe and the machine and the bed with disinfectant between every patient? I don't think that's, according to me at least,
No,
I will not be able to do it.
it is
I
only
will be
for the
able to
COVID
wipe the
patient.
probe, but I will not be able to wipe the machine or the bed. I may be able to change, like if there are tissues where the patient is lying down, I can change that. So I think it's for everybody to decide what they're doing. But basic minimum standards, as I said, are something which have already been said by the panelists. And for my stimulations, I've already said, I just call the patient 2 or 3 times and no blood test, except beta HCG.
I think
Sorry.
the patient is masked. Every patient who we're going to see is going to
I
be
agree.
masked.
Yes.
So even in the ultrasound room, her chances of spreading infection, because it has been shown now
Absolutely.
through many, many studies that with the mask, the transmission, even if she coughs, is pretty minimum. So
Yes.
if the patient is masked and we can, maybe she comes masked from home and we can add an extra mask, even a regular mask, simple mask.
Yes.
So we can add an extra mask. Maybe she has 2 masks just to protect the sonographic person because they're coming very close. And we have a slightly biggish ventilated open room. If we have, and many of us do, change your disposable sheet underneath the patient. Patient also likes that. She's not lying on the same
Yes.
bed. It's just a normal disposable sheet
And
under
yeah.
the patient.
Yeah.
I think these
Realistic. I mean,
basic precautions
that's
will
all
help.
I'm saying.
and
Let's
I was
be
thinking that we
realistic,
can,
and because if we are realistic, we'll be sustainable.
Yes,
If
absolutely.
we try to do absolutely idealistically, then we won't be able to sustain it. We'll do it for a week or 2, and then we'll stop doing it and then put everyone at risk.
So what I was saying is that in a mask patient in the ultrasound room, and a hand sanitizer, so that if
Yes.
there's any
Yeah,
COVID
that-
on that, and so you don't have to
Absolutely.
change, you don't have to clean up the this thing. Anyway, probes
Exactly.
we cover with condom, so you
Yeah.
don't have to clean the probe. You don't have to clean the machine because you wear your gloves. So I don't think so. We will, as you rightly said, what I was thinking is that we all need to sit down and have a balanced instruction given
Yes.
to all our members so that they can implement them because then what happens, everyone doesn't have the burden of rethinking or the how to do it. It's important for us to give that thing and in a balanced way. According to me, what Jaideep is saying is correct. We need to balance out our recommendation.
Absolutely. What I feel is, obviously between the 2 sonographies, keeping bed cleaning is absolutely not. But at the start of a clinic in the morning and at the end of a day, before we never used to clean with the disinfectant the surfaces. It's nice to clean everything with the disinfectants, maybe 3 hourly, 6 hourly, depending upon the load one has. But with the start and the end of the day, we should be doing it definitely. By chance, asymptomatic patient, she coughed on your machine when she was getting down, you don't know about it. You keep disinfectant at the end of the day, you should be doing that. This is advisable.
Yes.
I guess, yeah.
Easily done. It's not
And
That's something that
just
can be
75%, 70% alcohol by hypochlorite. It's not difficult to do. It
Very
takes a couple of minutes.
And look at it from an aesthetic point of view. No, it's better to give some gap for people to get down, go. We need to be, till now, our whole practice has been different. Now, need to be little bit more respectful to the patient also. So I feel that this is one point where a lot of people can when now they are going to go back after 1.5 months, they can think sit for 4 days and say, okay, what can I do when I go back to improve my practice in a better way or better fashion? So that is always
This is the opportunity.
Yeah, this is the opportunity. You have to do it.
Right.
See, and doing the OPDs, what important things one has to make it, patient doesn't come with the bags. Number one, there are strict restrictions. The husband holds the bags down. Second is she doesn't come with the reports. See the digital reports and do your own entry. Avoid touching their paper, avoid touching their bag. All these crowding in your consulting or
ENDT form.
Yes.
That's a problem.
With the gloves. With the gloves. Anyway, we should go on, Rohan.
Yeah, so ma'am, you were discussing about oocyte retrieval, and that's our next question. What are the precautions we should be taking during that? How much spacing should be actually be done between two pickups, and how many pickups should you be doing in a day anyway?
Actually, it depends upon your workload and the staff available. See, we don't fumigate the operation. Now also when we are doing obstetric or at Ruby Hall, when the cases are going on, one, we take seriously, of course, only COVID negative testing is mandatory, has been done and is allowed and possible. But it may not be possible every time. So when we made our endoscopy guidelines, what we suggested is after the case, you have to just clean with the surfactant and SEQ, the bed, the patient bed, table, whatever the trolleys and everything around, and you can take the next patient in. You don't need to fumigate. So depending upon how much staff you have to decide the number of cases with it. And as Rishikesh said, many teams involved, because I faced one asymptomatic staff, she came positive, and that time it was 6 weeks ago, and all the residents were working, and suddenly everyone from that unit underwent quarantine. So to avoid this phase, one has to make a mini team. How many cases not important? The mini team. So one team work for 1 week in that pertaining all on the ovum pickup and embryo transfer OT. If only that team works, the rest of the stimulation.
We begin some kind of collaboration with our friends who have an IVF center close by, because there is always a possibility, not very big units, you have smaller staff, you don't have 2 to 3 layers of people. So if there is a problem in the course of your cycle, like, you're doing 10 patients and then halfway through some patient comes positive and you have to quarantine, you should be able to make sure that the rest of the patients don't suffer. You should have a working relationship with a close by IVF center, so those patients can be transferred to that center and the work can continue. So we will have to have something like a group practice or a collaborative practice,
right,
even for IVF now.
Right, exactly. That is what I was about to ask Rishikesh sir.
Yeah,
Can I just interrupt? There are guidelines right now, Chaitanya, for this thing where the patient is exposed. Supposing the patient comes positive and he has come to your clinic, then there are 3 things which they divide it into. One is that you have just been at a social distance from the patient, like your admin staff, etc. So they need to just be watched. People who have close and do not have symptoms, they can use PPE and still work. And people who have been very exposed to more than 15 minutes, I don't remember the exact guideline.
35 minutes.
But people who have been exposed to more than 15 minutes of that patient without a protective gear have to be quarantined. So there are instructions now which are there, and I will definitely look it up and send it to everybody.
Right. So imagine a situation where you are doing, about to do pickup and you do this COVID test again and it comes positive. So there are only 2 situations where you may have to go ahead with the pickup, that is cancer patients and maybe, as rightly said by Sunita madam, OHSS patients. So Rishikesh sir, in that situation, how do we go ahead? Means a patient is positive and she is
anyway, as I told you, I would anyway consider that all patients are COVID positive. And so what I wanted to say is that you need to have a negative pressure system in the OT, where you can suck out. That's called a negative pressure. Even if many, in our OTs we have a special OT only for ovum pickup, but there are certain OTs where they use it for laparoscopic surgery also. So you must have if you must have a negative suck out. So there should be a suck out. So in between the two pickups, you should start once the pickup is over, you should start the negative system, and then after, let's say, so I have decided in my mind that I'm going to have a gap of at least half an hour after the patient is over between the taking the next patient. So half an hour to 45-minute gap I am going to have. I don't know what, but I have decided.
Yes.
Then, the lab pressure should be more than the OT pressure. So always we have air handling units in all our IVF centers. So the lab pressure is more. So the air movement is always towards the OT so that nothing goes into the lab. That is the second important thing. Minimize personnel in the OT. Minimal personnel. One nurse, one ward boy. That is also. It's very important to minimize the personnel in the OT. And then all the people who are there to wear a PPE if at all it is a COVID positive patient. So the PPE should be utilized. Now the question is, if there is an asymptomatic patient, would you use a PPE or not? Now that I leave to, but I personally feel that you are getting PPEs for 600, 700 rupees, 800 rupees nowadays. So it is, as a precaution, everyone can wear the PPE in the theater. For every patient, it doesn't really make a difference. But yes, that is an extreme position. But I personally feel that is left to anyone. If there's in the triage, if anything is positive, then you can wear a PPE. Now, but you can wear a restricted PPE. You can have a N95 mask. You can have face shield. You can have protective, clothing. There is a lower level PPE, like you use it for HIV and also. You can use that level PPE, not the coverall, which is used in the ICUs of COVID patients, but a lower level PPE can be used where the patients are asymptomatic. So these are certain precautions. And anesthesia. Now, anesthesia, general anesthesia, anesthetists have become very scared. The anesthetists may not give the anesthesia. So, in many of the European countries, the pickups are done under local anesthesia. As a regular routine.
I was about to ask that. Yes, I was about to ask that.
Right, and we in our lab have decided, because we have had an internal discussion amongst all our consultants, and we have decided that if there is a severe OHSS, and we feel that there will be more time taken for pickup, and if a particular anesthetist refuses to give anesthesia, we may do it under spinal also.
Right.
So this is an extreme case, but
regional,
but if you give local all the Japanese, I went to Japan to see, they do without anesthesia, but that's minimal ovarian stimulation. But what you can do is you can infiltrate 5 to 10 cc of 1% lignocaine in the wall, wait for 5 minutes, and you can easily do the procedure. And you can actually, there's a long needle, you can go through the probe and do ovarian subcapsular infiltration also, if you want, and that will create a totally painless kind of pickup. So we will have to shift to maybe a local anesthesia type of pickup in the future.
Anesthesia is also very important.
Yeah. Right. So these are the precautions I would like to take in the operation theater mainly.
Yeah. Exactly. Yes, madam. Please.
All the audience to save their money on a PC. I'm collecting 3-4 Caesar in a day, and from 10 o'clock till 5 o'clock, I'm in the operation theater. What I realize is we are using a 5-layer plastic laminated PPE. On that, we are wearing the green sheet and then our sterile routine gowns. When you take out the gown and when you take out the plastic gown, this PPE is not contaminated. You just wear another plastic gown and you wear your sterile gown. So one PPE, see, we have to think, as Jaideep was saying us, the cost effectiveness is also very important. So you try to do your pickups and transfer, but one PPE in the morning you wore at 8 o'clock in the morning, you can remain, unless you feel very hot in it, you can repeat one after the other cases, just plastic gown and surgical gown taken out. So this is how the centers can become. The embryologist once go in with the one PP, they can remain with the same PP. Only my question to Rishikesh was, when you want to keep 45 minutes, we keep 30 to 45 minutes. Suppose I'm doing one pickup at 11, the next pickup I will take at 11:45 or 11, depending upon.
No, I was thinking of doing that 1 hour gap of.
The embryologist, suppose I'm doing 6 cases, the embryologist will suffer a lot till they have to work till late evening. Then the 24 hours check, depending upon the how they perform. We do 24 hours check. So I don't know, maybe with the embryologist, with
No,
yourself.
I personally feel that, we will have to, there are two thoughts in it. I don't know which is the right one. Where, even programming can be done. But the point is that the gap I would like to increase because, we have been a little bit faster in the gap. But if you look at our main theaters where they do the main surgery, between two surgeries, they take more gap and they do a lot of cleanup and all, which I used not to do in so much in an ovum pickup because there's hardly any blood getting out and all that. But so we will have to balance maybe 15-20 minutes higher time period between two because we have to plan the HCG also. The HCG injection has to also be planned. Because in the lab we are going to bring in 1-2 more steps of wipe down of between cases. We never used to wipe down that much between cases, but maybe I may start the wipe down. So all that may delay a little bit, even in the lab, the procedure a little bit more. So I felt that maybe a 45-minute gap would be better. As we go along, we can find out what is the comfort zone for each lab. It is up to each one.
So Jaideep, as you have said, the batch IVF is maybe will come to our rescue. But this is a counterpoint. We cannot do many patients in a day. So maybe say 4 or 5 patients in a day is sufficient.
No, Chaitanya. I think I would like to present a contrarian point of view over here. So let's be very clear. How is COVID transmitted? COVID is not an airborne infection. It is transmitted through respiratory droplets. Okay, so by standing next to me, if I have COVID positive, unless I cough and there are respiratory droplets to which you are exposed, you will not get infected. All right. So, I mean, I agree with Rishikesh that you could increase the amount of wipe down, but how much longer are you staying? I mean, normally when we do a batch, we schedule it so that we are giving HCG so that we do one pickup every 30 minutes. We previously used to do it 20 minutes, but then we thought that that was a bit of a rush. So now we have anyway moved to 30 minutes. And we do get around 10 minutes between patients to do a wipe down. The only thing I'd like to caution here is that when you do a wipe down, when you do too many wipe downs, we should not use products which will increase the VOCs in the OT. Otherwise, that will be detrimental to our success rate because our AHUs or our ventilation systems may not be able to cope with the number of VOCs which are being released, because at the end of the day, even if you say that a cleaning product has no VOCs, there will be a certain number of VOCs. So I would urge everybody to please take care when you increase your number of wipe downs in the OT. I think 30 minutes between cases should be good enough for a nice, simple wipe down between patients, because at the end of the day, COVID is not transmitted through fluids. So, if your biologist is going to stay, or if you are going to stay in the lab for a longer time, exposure to oocyte fluid or exposure to semen is not going to increase your risk of COVID infection. Yes, if there is somebody in the staff who is COVID positive and that person touches
That is what is the point.
that the tube can act as a fomite. But over here, that is what you're going to do frequent hand washing for. So, for example, even if there is somebody who's COVID positive, as long as they wash their hands between procedures, their hands are not going to act as fomites. So I would again, just talk about this, how would you say, the gap between what is ideal and what is real. And I think even when I resume practice post-lockdown, I'm going to continue continue giving HCG minutes, and we already do wipe downs between patients, but we try to make sure that we do it with substances which are as low in VOC content as possible.
Right.
So, and
so
as I said, I'm not in this instance. In fact, I would say that our embryologists are going to be the most protected people, because they are going to be sitting in the lab and they are not actually going to come in direct contact with the patient. And given that, there is no transmission from bodily fluids, the embryologists are not going to be at risk unless the embryologist is going up and down between the lab and the OT and collecting tubes and so on. And that's where hand washing really is the most important thing.
Right. So we are coming to the end of this panel discussion.
Chaitanya, I wanted to make a point that the point is that there is no there is no viremia in the blood in COVID patients. I was listening to a talk from a person in Spain. They had done And so there is a chances of in the semen and the oocyte is going to be less. The point is that it's not that which will be getting the COVID in. The COVID will come in through the healthcare workers and the density of the people in the lab is the problem. You understand? Just like, if there are, let's say if we do 5 patients and in a gap of, let's say, 2 or 3 hours, then the number of people who are going to go in and out, and if you look at the prevalence of COVID in the general population, it is 10%. So if there are 10 or 20% people who are going to come in and out in a faster time period, the viral load in the lab, if one of them is positive for COVID, the viral load in the lab will be what is the worry. So in order to create that, that is why for example, that a lot of people are installing photocatalytic systems, which will kill the viruses and the VOCs in the system. So these are all not is that the patient fluid or the semen is giving us the COVID infection. It is one of the asymptomatic people, one of the 5 patients who came into that day into your OT for the pickup, or one of the 5 anesthetists or 2 anesthetists who came from outside for doing the pickup, the ward by the density of the inside and outside movement, which will create that one man who will release the viral load in the lab. And in that small area of the OT and the lab, unfortunately, our labs are sitting next to each other. That is the culture system for the infection to occur in the staff. And that is why all these precautions are being taken to reduce the viral load in the lab from the healthcare worker.
Right.
Not so much from the patient. You understand?
So discussing in the same line, Rishikesh sir, about cryopreservation. What precautions you will take while doing cryopreservation of positive patients?
I think Sunita wanted to say something.
Yeah, Rishikesh, what you say was so perfect. I will tell you, I'm the one who has done a cesarean on a COVID positive patient surrogate, and we have to do it. But as Jaideep was also saying, we don't have to worry. We did under spinal anesthesia. We were completely protected from top to bottom. The blood or the genital tract secretions, placenta, amniotic membrane, the coronavirus is not going to go. So we should not be so scared, but we should be careful when we tackle. Think every patient, asymptomatic or symptomatic COVID positive, and take precautions, so that in case later she turn out to be positive, you don't need to go for a self-quarantine. You may have taken a precaution. The new guidelines with the government, of course, government is changing every day with the guideline. Yesterday's guideline is saying, if you have operated with all PPE kits and everything for a positive patient, you don't need even self-quarantine. Forget about only testing, but you don't need a self-quarantine. While when we were in the operation theater, the biggest big debate that time, the government rule was, if you have operated, go for a quarantine. So every day, as we move on, more and more cases come, more understanding of the subject happens, the things will keep on changing. So if we take a precautions, we don't have to go for a self-quarantine, even accidentally, if we handle that patient. I feel so. But the IgM and IgG antibody titration has to come at the earliest for all of us to start the stimulation.
I think as soon as the antibodies come, we'll be able to get a much clearer picture about how to go about our practice as well.
Right.
So, Chaitanya, you are asking me about the liquid nitrogen thing. So in the lab, it is very important to give some important things that it should be, as I told you, the embryologist should be organized into 2 teams, and good laboratory practice has to be done. Minimum viral load in the lab is very important. So we already have AHUs with HEPA filter, but the HEPA filter doesn't destroy the viruses and the VOCs. So the photocatalytic converter system is very important to install. You can or you cannot. I mean, now I don't want to get into who can install and what can it. Ideally, I'm telling you this, and you will be surprised that in those who have, there are a lot of research papers that have come now that if you have the photocatalytic system installed in a lab, your pregnancy rate goes up by nearly 15%, because the air quality is very high level. The problem of liquid nitrogen contamination, I was listening to a lovely talk by Pama Jenny, who is the leading researcher in liquid nitrogen, and he said that the contamination not from the patient, not from the patient, but from the healthcare worker or the liquid nitrogen person who brings the liquid nitrogen. He may be positive. So in that case, there are different things. One is the multiple dilution step. So any embryo, oocyte, you have to go through multiple droplets of wash. So this is the basic principle in safe laboratory practice, is that anything you do multiple dilution. So even if there is a viral contamination, it will be diluted. Secondly, you have a system which you can create liquid nitrogen in your lab. It is a small system. It creates 10 liters of liquid nitrogen in the lab per day. So for your actual freezing, when you are freezing and you are putting the cap on the cryotop, for example, for that you use the sterile liquid nitrogen, and then the storage you can do. So these are certain things.
So what about vapor phase storage
yeah,
time?
so you can do vapor, but we don't use vapor. See, this is a theoretical thing. There's no point in. I'm very comfortable by dipping my embryos at minus 196 degrees centigrade. I don't want to go to vapor and all that. It's that theoretical. But and the last thing is, there's a new container that had come. In fact, I was planning to buy it 10 years back. So there's a small container and there's an ultraviolet light. So you can put your liquid nitrogen and you can start the ultraviolet light, and within 10 minutes, it sterilizes the liquid nitrogen, which can be used for doing the main steps of the freezing. And then storage, so you have to use the liquid nitrogen from the factory, which can be potentially contaminated. So now, as Jaideep said, that we don't know. What we have to do is, as we evolve ourselves, we are going to reduce our safety precautions, because we don't want to have too much cost going out, and we don't want patient to become hyper and the staff to become hyper beyond a point. So as we go along in the next 6 to 12 months, we will reduce the safety precaution, but we must start with a high safety level and then slowly taper it down to a level which is manageable.
Also, we were talking about semen. Yesterday, I read one publication. First time in my life I saw, submitted on 20th April, revised on 22nd April, and accepted on 23rd April, only in 3 days. Chinese people, where they have taken some 18, 19 semen, they were negative. They have taken old man testicular tissue and they did not find the virus in it, which is quite reassuring. But then you get the reports also about the embryo.
But Sunita, the point is that the contamination is not from the patient, it is from the healthcare worker. Every day the healthcare worker is going to come from the train. He is going to get infected. He is going to infect. That is the whole discussion in our embryology are all about HCV.
India knows rules theory. The staff came from a home, was positive. She contaminated 19 sisters. She contaminated 3 resident doctors in the ward. We have to screen 1,000 staff. It is the healthcare workers who are coming from home. I agree with you.
Yeah, so just the next question. I know where we've gone a little beyond our time already, but I'm still the next one. So Dr. Sunita, you're the president of IAG as well, ma'am. So I just want to know in short, what about fertility preservation surgeries and laparoscopies and hysteroscopies? How do we go about that?
See, in endoscopy, what is important is, one, we are giving a GA to the patient. We all know aerosol generation, GA. So that you are putting your anesthetist at risk and entire OT atmosphere. Secondly is, when you are doing again laparoscopy, you are using a bipolar energies, you are using the harmonics or any smoke evacuation. So if you need to have a good smoke evacuation system available, now they are very expensive. So at present, our guidelines said no elective surgery at all, no surgery where you feel bowel handling, that endometriosis, all should be avoided. If emergency, where we come to in a picture is an ectopic pregnancy, such a pain to open the abdomen for an ectopic. Many of us might have got the ectopic. So you take a precaution when you give a GA, anesthetist is given 15 minutes, we allow for all that. See, you know, of the AC air circulation, all those things have to be studied. So as of now, in a IAG, we have passed on a guideline. So if you are not having all these facilities, about separate air conditioning unit, the smoke evacuation system. Please try and avoid doing endoscopic surgeries.
Okay. So I think we are. This is the last question, and that this question is for Jaideep. Jaideep, what is the future of third-party reproduction?
Short-term future, I think there will be a lot of caution because we don't, it will add the burden of screening donors and so on and so forth. Long-term future, I don't see there being any difference unless the government of India decides to come up with some regulation and tries to abrogate third-party reproduction and divide them into union territories. So, short term, yes, I agree that it will increase our burden because we will have to test them, we might have to screen them, and so on and so forth. But long term, I really don't see any potential effect. I do, however, see that egg sharing is probably going to reduce, and oocyte vitrification as a preferred method of egg donation is probably going to be something which is
Yes.
probably going to become standard in the future.
Right. So we will end this discussion with a note on future of IVF and with the hope that this too shall pass. Rishikesh sir, your concluding remarks as far as future of IVF is concerned.
Hey, future of IVF, see, the IVF is basically an elective procedure in a lot of ways, and there is a possibility that in next 2 years, because of the economic downturn in the whole society, you see there is a lot of layoffs that are going to be there, and there is a possibility that in the next 2 years there may be a decrease in the work for all of us IVF specialists, and many of us may have to turn towards obstetric practice as well and be more general in the Chaitanya, you do everything, and Sunita Tandulkar does everything, but people like me who are very focused, we may have to also go into other areas because the writing on the wall is very clear. The next 2 years are going to be economically very difficult for all of us. So that as far as the financial future is concerned, I don't know. My advice to all of you is that we need to, number one, you need to consolidate your practice. You need to also look at your employee structure and how you're going to manage the employee structure. What about giving them the pay rises? All these are, 3-4 IVF consultants have phoned me, very senior ones, and said, Rishikesh, for the month of April, how much you are going to pay the employees? Are you going to not pay them anything? Are you going to give them 20%, 30%? So this is one question. If the lockdown continues for May, what about the May month? Are you going to pay the employees on the May month? So all these issues are there. So the short-term issues of future, long-term issues, there is a lot of turbulence. I don't know. But we all, if we stay together as a collective, we keep on having dynamic interaction, not say that webinars are useless and we should stop webinar and only distribute PPE and what, that kind of nonsense we should stop, because these are interactive things. We have to, as a group of intelligent people, come together, discuss it out, evolve a strategy which will help us and our patient, not only in the medically, but also financially. Remember, the financial problem is a big problem which we are going to face, because the practice is, a lot of practice is elective practice for all of us. It's not just delivery practice. You understand? So delivery, abortion are important, but elective practice is going to be decreased, and this is going to be a big problem for all of us, and we have to collectively face it.
Yeah, I feel a decade down, we will feel, oh, those 3-4 months did not bother much. Today we are feeling 6 weeks lockdown, 4 weeks lockdown, continuation of lockdown in Maharashtra. But a decade down, when we will look back, it's okay. 2 months, 3 months doesn't make any much difference in a life. One has to think about the safety first.
Okay, what I just wanted to... I just wanted to interrupt here that I think, the hospitals that we work at, the major corporate hospitals, have also cut what they're giving the doctors and all. And we are very happy about it because we want those hospitals to function. See, they have to pay their staff also. So I think we will have to create harmony amongst ourselves, that if we want our organizations to run, the whole family of IVF, which is your unit, needs to come together. Okay, everybody is going to take a cut. Everybody is going to do something which will help us tide over the crisis. And once the crisis is done, we can definitely compensate our people. But I think we need to plan for the next 2 or 3 months where the practice will be low, and we will need to, get our entire family of IVF together and have this discussion where we can all work together.
Very important. Very important. Even if you start the consulting, ART is not going to start for another 6 weeks. Stimulation will not start. And the entire team has to think together.
Right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Everyone so much for your valuable inputs. I want to thank all the panelists, Dr. Rishikesh Pai sir, Dr. Rishma Pai ma'am, Dr. Sunita Tandulwar ma'am, Dr. Jaideep Tam for taking out time and being with us for this webinar. I also want to thank Dr. Nandita Palchetkar, President of AMOGS, for giving us this opportunity to conduct this webinar. And also thanks to our academic partner, Alembic, who's actually gotten all of us together as well. And all the people in the background as well as in the audience who have really come and been a part of this webinar as well. And lastly, I want to thank Dr. Chaitanya Shembekar sir for being a wonderful co-moderator and guiding me through this webinar as well. Thank you everyone, and I really hope you had a good time.
And on behalf of Alembic Elena Division, I also thank all the doctors, Dr. Nandita Madam, Dr. Chaitanya sir, Dr. Rohan sir, Dr. Rishikesh sir, Rishma Madam, Sunita Madam, Jaideep sir, to give us the opportunity for be an academic partner in this type of event.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, everyone, to connect.
Everybody
Now,
was really happy and got a lot of chats. Chaitanya and Rohan, good job. Really good job. And all
Excellent
you
job.
other people were excellent.
Suddenly,
Great job.
Seriously, everybody loved it. You have to see what is there in the chats. Thank you, seniors. Thank you for telling us. There's a lot of discussions. And, Shaunak and
Awesome job. Thank you.
online. He was so
Fantastic. 6 o'clock Zoom meeting starting. I'm taking a break for a coffee. It's a
I'm telling you.
and my 6 o'clock my Zoom meetings I'm sitting. Pune, weather is fantastic. You have the hill and the rain.
the weather in this house is very good. The AC is on. I have the weather like you only.
Hello, stay in the heat. It's better for COVID. Garmi mein